Good morning. This is Animal on Control. Welcome to the voice chat. These calls are recorded for uploading to social media, and by joining a call, you're consenting to being recorded. Anyone wishing to join a call should email me at animaloncontrol@gmail.com, and I'll reply with instructions. Today's topics: new members, rage monsters, mutts on planes, and potpourri. Joining me, I have Jones. What is up?
Nothing much. It's the evening for me.
The evening for you? Yeah. I know earlier we were discussing, I know there'd been some conversations on the Discord regarding your ex and your son and her friend and the dog. Would you, maybe catch us up on that or let us know what's going on there?
Yeah. So my ex lives with our son in Texas. And so I don't see him every day. And she has a dog. Her friend has a dog, I should say. And according to her, they only hang out for an hour a month. But this is a pit bull. This is a big dog, and
Yep.
I see the obvious problem with that, but she thinks I'm crazy and I'm only out to stress her out instead of trying to warn her.
Yep. Yep.
So I've confronted her twice. We get into these big arguments, and then you know I can't just keep at it because I'm not going to change her mind, and we're just gonna we're just gonna fight if they keep bringing it up. But it's still a problem.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I understand. I appreciate the concern, because it is, it's not safe. I mean, these animals are not safe to have around anybody. Because your son is what, about 3,
He's 2.5, so
2.5? Yeah, yeah. And unfortunately, that's an age where they're very, very well. They're vulnerable at any age, particularly that age. Um, yeah, that's a tough situation. And I know, other people may find themselves in it, and it's a source of anxiety for you, and it's not an unfounded concern. Those dogs attack kids all the time. They're not freak accidents. Um, I don't know. Well, with her friend, maybe I don't know what you could say to them, but because you're right, you're not really going to. The only thing you can probably say to somebody like that is that, look, you know what? If something does happen, there's going to be repercussions. Because that's the way, maybe not your ex, but her friend. It's the way a lot of people, dog people generally, and pit bull people in particular, the way they act, or their outlook is like, well, yeah, if something bad happens, I can just skate on it. No, I'm not going to be held accountable. So, that might be a point worth making. But, respect, man. I know that's not easy. I'd feel the same way, totally.
I mean, I know her friend's gonna, you know, she's only gonna, look out for her dog, not our kid.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, that's a good, what they call the null hypothesis. That's a good assumption. I mean, it's not a good assumption, but it's a correct one. And they'll say, "Oh, that never happened before." I mean, do you know, does a dog have any history of being dangerous? Like, does it, kill cats or attack the mailman or anything like that?
If it did, I wouldn't know about it because, I'm not gonna get any of that from the owner. You know,
Yep.
I can tell you that the person who owns this dog is constantly on her Facebook, tweeting out or posting about adoptions and please save this dog, and they're like 90% of them are pit bulls,
Yep.
and just
Yep.
no room in her mind that these dogs are dangerous at all.
Yeah, with the rescues and adoptions. Yeah, pit bulls, America's favorite dog to get rid of. Even just that by itself, you think, okay, pit bulls are 5 or 6% of the dog population, but they're 90% of the dogs in shelters, surrenders. Doesn't that say something? You might think, maybe there's a good reason for that. And that's in spite of all the propaganda, in their favor. And there's propaganda against them also, but they don't listen to that stuff. But most of the propaganda is favorable. Yeah, so yeah, she's a pit nutter.
Yeah. In her mind, all those dogs went to the shelter so she could be a hero and rescue them.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Yeah, because nobody has anything better to do with their time than that, right?
Apparently not. I mean,
I guess not. Yeah, I think I get well, that's the thing is, dogs are a religion, and they're virtue signaling. They're saying, see, look at how pious I am. I'm genuflecting at the altar of the furry Jesus by doing this, right? These dogs' lives are so valuable. They're so precious. They're so, amazing. They're so valuable. And you figure, like, probably on average, the life of a pit bull actually has negative value, all things considered. But oh man, pit bulls. Anyway, yeah, thanks for sharing that. I want to, maybe kind of pursuant to that. I'm gonna throw up throw up. Yeah, I'm gonna throw up for a minute. I'm gonna put on a share, and I want to talk about nutters is rage monsters. And who knows, is this person we were just discussing maybe like this? That, dog people frequently, when you counter their narrative or say or do something they don't like, they throw the rage monster routine, foaming at the mouth, apoplexy. There's some good words to look up, by the way. But, and I've experienced that firsthand, like the crazy dog lady, not the current one, but the prior one across the street. She almost tackled me in my driveway because somebody had the audacity to call animal control and complain about her out of control dog. Ironically, I'd shared all the details of that prior. Ironically, I hadn't complained that time. It was one of the other neighbors, but I guess the dog lady thought it was me. So yeah, she came charging at me, charging and bellowing, like ran right up to me on my property, gave me a middle finger and screamed, "Fuck you." I was, and this is not uncommon amongst dog people, but I wanted to explore that because this has come up a few times, this type of behavior. So this was a story that came to our attention fairly recently. So, and this is about the topic of this article. It's a BBC article about, veterinarians and veterinary workers are having sort of a mental health crisis, depression, suicide, and so forth. And a lot of it is due to the actions of pet owners. Now we say pet, what does that really mean? So in this case, this is a case in Maine. So here's what they're saying. Veterinarians and their staff also deal with harassment and abuse from clients, both in person and online, in the form of negative reviews and even threats. 2015 AVMA, I think that's some veterinary association. A survey of about 350 U.S. vets showed that 1 in 5 had either been cyber bullied or knew a colleague who had been. So last year, a viral story about a puppy that was surrendered to a Maine veterinary medical center resulted in such online attacks and threats of violence that police had to be stationed outside the building. Now, I find that's very exceptional. Typically, if you're threatened, like if somebody's making death threats, the most the cops will do or authorities will do is perhaps issue a restraining order, meaning they can't go within 100 feet of you without being arrested, as if there's a cop following you everywhere to make sure that doesn't happen. But that's about the best. So they actually got like on-site police protection. That's how bad these threats were and how seriously they were taken. So here's what instigated it. The incident involved a 4-month-old German Shepherd puppy who'd swallowed a skewer and needed life-saving surgery. It's like swallowed a skewer, I guess, I don't know, for like kebabs or something. I guess they were making kebabs and the dog ate it. The cost of the complicated procedure and aftercare was close to $10,000, more than the owner could afford. So as a last result, to avoid euthanasia, the clinic offered her the option to surrender the puppy to a new owner who could cover the cost. So basically, you give the dog away and the new owner pays for the procedure. So I guess it's not a, if you care about dogs, I guess it's not a bad deal for the dog. And what are they going to do? So, okay, so you give the dog away and then you go out and you get another dog. Like, what's the big deal, right? So I guess with the owner, they didn't take the deal seriously. I guess they tried to weasel, as dog people typically do. It says when the former owner's story of attempting to get the puppy back aired on local television, it unleashed a social media maelstrom. They received hourly threats to burn down the hospital and to kill our staff and their families. Our phone lines have been deliberately jammed so real emergency calls cannot get through. You got to think about how impossibly stupid are these dog nutter terrorists, right? Like if you kill all the vets, who's going to vet your dog? Who indeed, right? Or if they quit or kill themselves or whatever. I mean, they're shooting themselves in the foot by doing this, in addition to showing like what, terroristic cretins they are. And actually, I think that the deal offered was pretty good. But, another takeaway from this is that, they're blaming the vet for, facilitating that deal. But they're not putting the blame. They always say, oh, yeah, more owner responsibility is required. Blame who's holding the leash and blah, blah. Well, you know what? Really, who is at fault for this? Well, I mean, you've got the dog for being a stupid shit beast, number one, right? But you've also got the dog owner who think, look, if you have a dog in the house, you have to dog proof it. Don't leave anything within the dog's reach that could eat, because dogs will eat anything. I know we were talking about this in the Discord, and the thesis was, probably they were making skewers, they were doing some shrimp on the Barbie or something, and the dog ate, the skewer had food on it, meat on it, it ate the meat and the skewer. But you got to keep that stuff away from dogs, right? Because they'll literally eat anything. Which makes, owning a dog very problematic, well, for a lot of reasons, but particularly that one. So this dog ate the skewer, right, screwed up its entire internal organs. The other thing to consider also is that, a procedure like this is like not, it's not foolproof, I'm sure. There was probably still a risk the dog could die. So, if somebody in this situation, you're looking at, a pile of vet bills and a dead dog. So you got to evaluate that also. I mean, probably the best thing to do in a situation like this is probably just to euthanize the animal. But you got to think about how just phenomenally stupid these dog cult terrorists are. They're not putting the blame where it belongs. And actually, the old owner shouldn't get it back because they've already proven they're irresponsible. You left a dangerous item within reach of this dog that'll eat anything. So I found this was very, very interesting. I got a little echo going there, but so it goes on to say how, veterinarians are just, they're beside themselves over this. They're depressed. They're killing themselves, or they're contemplating suicide. I did some due diligence on this, and these kind of, rage monsters, right, are pretty much limited to dog owners, right? Because we really, like I emphasize, it's a dog problem. because I've, been in contact with, vet techs or veterinary workers. You also read what they write in the Reddits and so forth, that really of all the pet owners, the dog people are the worst. They're really the only ones pretty much, 99 times out of 100 acting like this. It probably flows out of their low maturity level and sense of entitlement.
Well, they're probably the only ones getting bills like this. I mean, I can't see a cat doing something that would, result in $10,000 vet bills.
Right. Yeah, unless it was maybe got hit by a car or something. But now you're not over like a cat. Well, a cat might try to eat the meat off the skewer. I mean, cats are not above stealing food either, although dogs are way more food obsessed than cats are. But yeah, I don't see a cat actually swallowing the the skewer itself. Yeah, I don't see that happening. This is a story I related once a while back when I was a teenager. My stepdad was on the back patio grilling hamburgers, and we had a yellow lab, and the lab ate all 4 hamburgers right off the grill while they were cooking. And even at the time, I thought, I don't know if she was really injured, but it's like, imagine just putting your face onto the grill to eat those things. I mean, it had to hurt. I mean, she had to have suffered some minor burns, but her food obsession was so over the top that she did it. She ate all 4 of them right off the grill. That I recall, I don't think it resulted in a vet bill, but yeah. So really, you're right. I mean, it's probably a self-selecting population, because these kind of things typically only happen to dog people because no other animal is stupid enough to do something like this. The other thing, pursuant to that, was this has been shared a few times also. And this is not an isolated incident either. Dog enjoys the priciest meal of his life, $4,000 cash. Look at that. Look at that. That dirty shag carpet there. A money-hungry pooch was in the doghouse for chewing up $4,000 that his owners had left out. But it's like, you can't leave anything out. If you have you can't do it because a dog is going to try
for them.
Yeah. Yeah. So this is in Pennsylvania. So the set aside for a contractor. So what had to happen was, they consulted a vet. The vet said the dog would probably be okay. But what they did was they collected all the dog turds, because the money it paid had been chewed up and it had passed all the way through the dog's digestive tract. So here they are, they're taking, like, they're trying to wash fragments of the bills out of the dog crap. Because apparently, we did some due diligence on this. Apparently, as long as the serial number is still legible, the full serial number, you can exchange it for like a quote, a clean or a non-destroyed bill, right? So that's what they did, was they were able to recover about $3,500 by going through the dog crap and piecing all this stuff back together. Talk about a crappy job. Holy shit, literally.
I think they'd have been ahead if they'd have just thrown the dog out right then and there.
Yeah. Well, probably. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Did they have to pay the vet too?
They said consulted. I mean, at one point I said, and I was just snarking, I said, yeah, pay the vet like $6,000 to get the $4,000 back. But they said they consulted. I don't know. They just called them. But think about it. Well, you get the money back. If the dog costs $2,000 a year on average, well, if you get rid of it in 2 years, you would have gotten your $4,000 back, right, in savings. So there's your $4,000. And this is not an isolated incident either. There's several other cases of this. And who would have thought that money was so tasty? I never It just never, occurred to me. But it's the same kind of thing. It's like, yeah, you know what? If you're going to have a dog in the house, you got to put everything away. You can't leave anything. Anything that's within the reach of the dog is basically the dog is going to consider, brunch. So,
it's just a higher bar for them. I don't have to think about this stuff in my day-to-day activities.
right.
I can leave things on the counter and find them right where I left them. And
Yeah, it'll be where you left it. Yeah. Yep. So that was an interesting case also. Segueing, I wanted to beat up on service dog people some also. Let me just check something else real quick. Who do we got? No. Okay. Yeah, so I wanted to beat up on service dogs some. This was something that came to my attention, and this is not the first time something like this has happened either. So it says U.S. Airways flight forced to make emergency landing after Truffles, the service dog, relieves itself twice in aisle, making passengers vomit. So apparently the service dog, and it was some big, mop dog, had a case, I guess, of explosive diarrhea, crapped all over the aisle of the plane, and the stench was so bad, because you're in an enclosed space. The stench was so bad that it was causing other passengers to throw up. And the whole situation was so bad that the whole flight had to abort. They had to make an emergency landing. So dog released itself twice in the plane's aisle, causing travelers to become sick when they were overwhelmed by the stench. PU, right? So, the full size, that's on took off, couldn't wait to reach their destination. And it's part of the problem with having really any animal on a plane, or any animal that can't use the toilet, or an animal that uses everything as a toilet. On a plane it's not, it's bad enough that, say, the dogs are in bars and restaurants, but at least if the dog needs to go, you can just take it outside. If you're on a plane at 35,000 feet, it's not that simple. The dog has to go somewhere inside the aircraft. That's the problem. And you could probably argue, I know it's not our biggest concern, but there's an animal welfare issue here also, because you're putting the dog in a situation, because this is a long flight. It was LA to Philadelphia. That's probably a 6-hour flight, 5 to 6 hour flight. So you're basically saying the dog can't piss or crap for 6 hours. It's kind of like cruel to the dog. But of course, if you let it crap, then it's cruel to everybody else on the plane, right? So it's just a really bad situation. And it goes back to, and I'm sure this service dog person, she's probably a pretty typical, quote, service dog person. And there's the culprit there, is probably pursuing this in bad faith. I find it very unlikely that the dog was doing anything essential for her when it was actually on the plane. So it did. It went in the middle of the aisle. There's the dog there, relieved itself. This is just ridiculous that something like this is happening. Okay, about an hour into the flight, so it's smelling this terrible smell. I thought it was the family in front of me. Okay, I have a little 8-month-old, and I was like, that is the worst blowout I have ever smelled. Of course, the dog nuts are going to come in, and they're going to say, well, you got, babies, they crap too. Well, they crap in diapers that are changeable. And the other thing, too, is there was a lot of folks I have, and Kanon also has been putting a lot of time into exposing, dog nut, logical and ideological fails. But that, touches on something. They're going to say, well, yeah, babies crap on planes. Why can't my rover crap on the plane? And the thing is that I don't know what fallacy is being, indicated there, but what they're saying is it's okay if the environment has a problem, right? Since given the world's not a perfect place, that means that it's perfectly okay for dogs to create more problems. And you see this all the time, like say with barking. They'll say, well, you live in an environment that's already acoustically challenged, right? Because you've got people mowing lawns and airplanes flying overhead and so forth. So that somehow justifies all these endlessly barking dogs. And it's like, no, the fact that the environment isn't perfect is not justification to make it worse. So I'm going to nix that up front. The fact that there might be a human infant crapping in a diaper on this plane does not make it okay to bring a dog on to take a crap. Because you know what? Human infants are human beings, and they have a right to be on this plane. The dog does not. A dog does not have a right to be anywhere except the owner's private property, and maybe the vet's office when he needs a skewer removed. That's it, period. So I look up the aisleway, and there's a dog pooping right in the middle of the aisle. It's a big dog, 3 or 4 feet tall or long, and he was just going. The other thing, too, is bringing something like this onto an aircraft is a safety issue. Because let's say they do an emergency landing or they need to do an emergency evacuation of the plane. This dog is going to get in the way. He's going to impede, the exit of some people. And that's a problem. But I want to get to my main point here when I go through the rest of this. So it wasn't little pieces. It was fully fledged dog diarrhea. So you have this torrent of dog crap spewing all over the inside of the aircraft. Staff desperately tried to clean up the mess using paper towels, disinfectant, and then laying towels on top so passengers could get by. It's like, if you sign up to be a flight attendant, or a pilot even, it's like, is cleaning up dog diarrhea, is that in your job description, or should it be? Because that comes up with a lot of the service dog fraud also, is that people bring these things into grocery stores and restaurants, and they foul the place up, they piss and shit on the floor, and then staff gets stuck cleaning it up. But you know what? Nobody should be picking up dog shit with the exception of dog owners and perhaps kennel workers. That's it. It's not the job description of flight attendants. It's not the job description of servers in restaurants. It's not the job description of anyone else. They need to keep these things out of these places. Again, I'm confident this is somebody, I don't know if it gets into what the stated disability was. So but just as the mess was cleaned up, the dog had to go again. So here's so the second time after the dog pooped, they ran out of paper towels. They didn't have anything else. The pilot comes on the radio, hey, we have a situation in the back. We're going to have to emergency land. So all these people who had some place to go are not getting there on time. And I'd like to stop for a second. This is an example of, not just entitlement, but dog owner elitism, that the needs or the interests of the dog owner take precedence over everyone and everything else in any given situation. So every other person on this plane, all of them, not just the passengers, but the flight crew also, they just get to go fuck themselves. No, you're not going to Philadelphia. Why? Because this one dog nutter wanted to bring their fucking shit mutt on the plane. That is why. All these other people can just go fuck that. And that's really the root of the problem with dog culture, is that dog owners are empowered to do whatever they want and the hell with everybody else. Nothing else is of any consideration ever. And this is a really good example of that. I'm going to give you, because you say, well, okay, well, people are on vacation or whatever. Well, no, Fido should not be ruining anyone's. The only vacation Fido should be ruining should be the dog owner. It should not impact what these people are doing, should not impact anyone else. I'll give you an example from my personal. Oh, sorry, you're going to say something?
And really, how many babies end flights like this? Like, interrupt a flight like this? Because, you don't hear those stories.
You don't hear that. Well, the thing is, babies crap in diapers. So, and I've seen that actually because I used to fly a lot for work. And sometimes, yeah, they'd have to, change a diaper mid-flight. They take the baby to the lavatory and change it out, right? They don't just pull down the kid's pants and let him shit on the floor. And again, too, it's like, human children, goes back to our initial conversation, human children and dogs are not equivalent, right? The needs of the kid are going to take precedence over the needs of the dog every time, right? So if this had happened with a person, I think that would put sort of a different spin or framework on this. But here you have a shit mutt. There's no good reason for it to be on the plane. I'm sure this quote service dog handler was pursuing that in bad faith. And all these people were inconvenienced. And it's not just vacations. You think, okay, probably many of them are. I don't know who in LA. Well, maybe there were people returning home from a vacation. I'm thinking probably not many LA people go to Philadelphia on a vacation, but to each their own, whatever. But some of these people are probably pursuing some very, very important business. Like, in other words, going for a job interview, right? Say if you're an LA person, you got your dream job in Philadelphia. You say, okay, the weather sucks, but I'm going to get $1 million a year. That is fucked up. Or perhaps somebody traveling to say goodbye to a loved one on their deathbed. No, this pulls a rug out of that person also. That actually happened. Well, this didn't happen, but when I was about 20 years ago, my grandmother was in hospice and she was going down for the last time. Her life expectancy was days, essentially. And this was on the East Coast because actually she was in Connecticut. And my younger brother, was living in California. And, so I spoke to him and I said, yeah, if you want to say goodbye to her, now's the time to do it. So he hopped on a plane, flew out, picked him up at the airport, went to the hospice, and he got there literally probably an hour before she died. But she was still cogent. Like he literally got to say goodbye to her. This would fuck up. Imagine if that were the case. Imagine if you were one of these other people on this plane. If that was one of their, background stories. All of that just so the stupid service dog fraudster could bring their shit mud on the plane. And the problem is, our government protects this kind of behavior. It's ridiculous.
It's hard to imagine there wasn't at least one dog hater by the end of all this.
Oh yeah. Well, that's the thing is because I know all the dog foamers are going to defend this. Oh, service dogs are essential. You don't know. And the thing is, do I know for a fact she's a fraud? No, but that's the null hypothesis. It's like 99% of them are fake. So it's probably that's the safe assumption if you have to guess. And 99% is probably reasonable doubt threshold anyway. So, and you know what my attitude is, until there's some kind of proofing system in place for these things, again, null hypothesis. I'm just going to assume they're all fake. They come on, you even see them. These knuckleheads come on these comment sections, and I'll probably even get a couple on this one to be like, well, you don't know me. You don't you know what? You claim your dog is legit. Fine, prove it. Oh, you don't have to? Well, yeah, they don't have to prove it, and none of us have to believe them, right? They can say whatever they want. It's like, yeah, your dog is legit. Yeah, I was the first man on Neptune. What do you think of that?
Sure, equal amounts of proof here.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, well, I don't have to prove anything, right? It's like I can just say whatever I want, you know. But they, you know, nobody, yeah, they're not required to prove it. But really, nobody needs it. Well, what they can do is they can force people to accommodate them, right? They can say, oh, yeah, federal law says as long as I claim it's a service dog and indicate some kind of activity, it's been trained to, I don't know, lick its butt every time I have a hypoglycemic crisis. Okay, they have to buy it. It's like, because again, there's no oversight, there's no standards set here at all. Anybody with a dog can claim it and go on one of these planes. And the thing is, they say, okay, well, if the dog misbehaves, kicks it out. And as tempting as it is to throw the dog off the plane at 35,000 feet, you can't do that. Well, not yet anyway.
There's ways to accommodate that, I'd imagine.
Yeah. Well, you'd have to descend because the air's too thin to support life at 35,000 feet. It'd probably have to descend to maybe 10,000.
Or on the hardware side, just make an airlock.
Yeah. Dog ejection port. Because that's a problem with planes. It's like they say, like with restaurants and grocery stores, because the law says, if the dog isn't housebroken, like if a dog goes into your restaurant and shits on the floor, I think regardless of what the owner claims, you can kick the dog out. You can, boom, gone, right? But the problem is the damage is already done. But in this case, you can't do that. It's like you can't say, okay, Fido's having a bout of diarrhea, like take him outside. You can't do that. And it's one good reason is that I don't care if it's like the most legit service animal in the world, they should not be on planes. It's a health issue, it's a safety issue. It's just a complete disaster. And this is not the first time this has happened either. Like with the dogs eating stuff they're not supposed to eat. This is actually becoming fairly common also. And again, mainly because you're on a 6-hour flight. Yeah, the dog's probably gonna have to take a dump. I mean, it's gonna happen, right? And that's going to trigger another situation like this. If it's a commuter flight, if it's a half hour, 45 minutes, that's one thing. But yeah, these things are just going to keep happening. And yeah, and it violates the rights of all these other people to, move about freely. They bought, a ticket. They paid the airfare to go from LA to Philadelphia, and that's where they should go. I mean, barring an air disaster. But the thing is, dogs should not be causing air disasters. So it goes on. The stink was so bad that passengers nearby started dry heaving and vomiting. The plane was forced to divert to Kansas City, where a cleaning crew cleaned up the mess. So, and also too, is that puts people at risk also because, an aircraft is most likely to crash in its, takeoff or landing configuration. So it took off again and finally arrived at its destinations, but some passengers missed their flight connections.
Greatest fear while traveling.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing too, is I haven't flown. Like actually the last time I flew was in 2014. And it was a small charter flight. The last time I flew commercially like this was maybe 2011 or 2012. And that, even though I think maybe that was right around the time I became woke on this issue, but I started to detest flying because, yeah, you get like sexually molested by the TSA workers getting on and off the plane, like through security and all that. And you got to take your shoes off and your belt off, and it's a huge hassle. So I just don't. I mean, these days I just take road trips for vacations. But this is another reason to, avoid flying. I don't know if you remember, I blog posted a situation back in 2017 where a woman was kicked off a flight for claiming a dog allergy, right? So she boards the plane. She realizes there's dogs aboard, right? And she claimed she had a very serious, like a fatal dog allergy, basically. Now, what was interesting was, how do you manage something like that? Well, they asked her, they said, okay, you say you have this health problem? Really? They said, show us a health certificate. They said, show us, you got to prove, show us a medical document.
They've got to prove it.
They got to prove it, right? Show us a medical documentation proving that you have this malfunction, right? And she didn't have it. She didn't have such a thing. And she also refused to leave. So she was literally carried off the plane by security. Like, they literally dragged her off the plane, kicking and screaming. But you talk about a power differential or a big injustice. Those dog people don't need to prove anything. Although I think I think for dogs on planes now, you have to basically go on and, check a box that it's a legit service dog. Just like I can check a box to say I was the first man on Neptune, right? So they basically ask, do you swear it's a legit service dog? Oh, yeah. Cross my heart, hope to die, stick a needle in my eye, right? But anyway, yeah, so that's the thing. You talk about double standards. They said to her, it's like, you got this malfunction, you say, prove it. Prove you're allergic to dogs or GTFO. And yes, she refused to leave, so they literally dragged her off the plane. So his fellow passenger snapped images of the dog and updated followers throughout the ordeal on his Twitter page. Can't make this up. I'm sure the S word was in there. He wrote, this dog has now shit twice. Plane is emergency landing because people are getting sick. Hazmat team needs to board U.S. Airways. What a fucking nightmare. Holy shit. Oh, my dog. So, the company later responded to him on Twitter saying, our apologies for your discomfort. Oh, your discomfort, huh? There are also apologies from the dog's owner. She said, hey, so sorry. I wanted to get all your addresses, so I give you a Starbucks gift. But how thoughtful of her, this is the most unique flight experience I've ever had. Well, actually, is it? Because that's a problem with these service dog people. Like, let's say they take a dog someplace and it craps on the floor. So they get kicked out, but they just go someplace else and do the same thing. That's the problem, right? So maybe even if this passenger, if they've been blacklisted from U.S. Airways, well, they'll just fly Delta from now on, right? And they can go crap on the aisle of one of their planes. Unbelievable.
It does seem like they're the first ones to at least catch on that there's a problem with service dogs. Because I know for the housing side of things, if you want to rent a hotel room or get an apartment, all you have to do is claim service dog, and no one can touch you after that.
Yeah, I think, ESAs, service dogs are, and ESAs, because people mix the two up. Like, a service dog is a dog that's, allegedly been claimed to assist a person with a disability. But there's also something called an ESA, which is an emotional support animal. and that's meant to, bring comfort to people. Um, oh, I got somebody's trying to join. Hold on a second. Link isn't Jones. Did the link work for you?
Yes, it worked for me. It was posted in the Discord
Yeah, I
chat.
posted in the Discord. Yeah, I got somebody saying the link isn't working. Let's see. Maybe like exit out of Skype and try again. Skype is a little funky. Like if you just leave the application up, you get crashes and weird things. Exit out of Skype and try again. Yeah, that's weird. But so yeah, airlines. But in any case, ESAs are emotional support animals, and those are only it's a glorified pet. It's a comfort animal. You could argue that any pet is an emotional support animal. Those don't have the same protections as service dogs. Those are, like you said, those are only protected in housing, like say for apartments. So if if you're a landlord and you want, a dog-free apartment, somebody can show up with a dog and say, oh, it's an ESA, and you have to rent to them. But ESAs are not protected for most public access, like say stores and restaurants and things like that. But the thing is, all they got to do is, again, claim that the ESA is a service dog, and then they can take it everywhere, right? Because I don't know if the two things are even mutually exclusive. I guess a service dog can also be an ESA, I suppose. But I think actually ESAs do have are some standards there. I think you need a prescription from a doctor or psychiatrist.
I don't think that's hard to get.
We got somebody. Oh, Sheepie's on. You made it. Yay. You there, Sheepie?
Yes, I'm.
I think you're breaking up a little bit.
Yep, I'm here. I have made it.
All right. Yeah, we were talking about, I wanted to talk to you because Jones is on. We were talking about, dog nutter throwing, tantrums and dogs crapping in airplanes. But probably we'll just keep going. But since you're on, because you have a really interesting situation also, let us get us caught up on what's going on across the street with the dog hoarders.
It's a very, very odd situation. I don't even know exactly what is going on because they're not there. Like the homeowners that I've told you about, the woman who is, I guess she's running some type of dog rescuing situation out of their home.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
They've been gone for, I think, weeks now. Like, I have not seen hide nor hair of the actual homeowners, but there's like a couple of different cars that come and go. And I guess the only reason they're there seems to be to like care for these dogs or feed
Yep.
them. But for whatever reason, the people who are coming over to do that, I guess don't have a good system in place because every time they're here, the dogs are just like loose. Like they're just running amok. Like there's pit bulls, there's uh there's a Great Dane that I see off and on. I don't know where they keep him. It's sometimes it's there, sometimes it's not. There's like a husky also that I see occasionally. I haven't now right now there's 3 dogs, 3 large dogs, and that's it. Whereas previously I counted like 10 dogs at
Wow.
one point. So I don't know if some of them are just like in the house almost all the time. I don't know. And then some are still being kept in the garage because the actual homeowners won't ever raise the garage doors fully. But whoever's coming to do this, like take care of the dog kennel that's in there, has been raising the garage door all the way so I can see in, and it's like their garage is filled with kennels, like chain link kennels.
Yeah, I saw that, right? 'Cause you posted that to the Discord. So yeah, the garage, you give people a mental image. Their garage faces the road. And it looks like it's a double door garage. I think it's a double. And on the one side, on
It
the
is,
left
yeah.
hand side, they lifted it up, and just inside you can see it's about a 6 or 7 foot chain link
Yep.
fence. I guess I don't know if you call it a fence if it's indoors, just inside of the garage doors.
Yeah.
So that's interesting. And they basically just hose all the dog crap out into the driveway.
Yeah. Yeah, it's literally like I live next to a dog shelter or like a kennel, like an animal.
Yeah.
They
Well,
hose the garage out, and they don't hose the shit like out down like further into grass, or like there's just now a constant, like, I think you could see in the video I sent, there's like a constant line just right outside the garage doors of shit.
mhm.
Like just a thick, it's so it's cold here now. It's like it's, basically like winter, but I am so concerned about once spring and summer come, if they have this like piles of shit like right outside their I mean, it's unimaginably disgusting. It's
It
just
is.
so, and I don't even know what to make of it. Like,
How well, you're right. We say it's like living near a dog kennel. It's like, well, you are living near a dog kennel.
right,
And it's
It's a
literally.
the worst
developed
thing
country.
too is sorry, go ahead, Jones. Sorry.
Oh, we live in a developed country too. That's the crazy part.
And actually too is like that's the only thing that's people, because Sheepy, you live in, I guess how is your area zoned? Was it zoned ag or zoned rural? You
So
know?
I looked this up, and it's apparently it's like uh this weird area where I'm technically like in the city limits, but it's called like no man's land. Like I don't know, we're like ruled by the county, or like the rules are the county rules instead of the city. I
Okay.
don't know. It's very odd. I live
Yeah.
like near on basically Indian territory. Like there's a tribe that
Um,
owns most of the
oh,
land around here.
yeah, so it's a Native American reservation jurisdiction. That's interesting.
Yeah, and they do not seem to have, I have never in my entire life uh seen, I know there's stray dogs everywhere, and I know people dump dogs like out in the country or whatever. The amount of dogs in this area is something I have never experienced. Like, I feel like I feel like I'm a few years away from there being just like feral packs of like rabid dogs, right? Like, there's
Yeah,
so
and
many stray
perhaps.
dogs.
Yep.
Yeah.
Particularly if the problem's not addressed. Because yeah, that's the thing is, yeah, because sometimes, if you're in an area that's, say, zoned ag or zoned rural, you get more leeway in doing things like that. Although even in the suburbs, like, because I think you've been on, we had, Bad on here, and he
Yeah.
lives in, I actually re-listened to that segment that we did. It was a 4th of July special or whatever. That was a really good segment. But we were going through his situation where it's a suburban neighborhood of single family homes, but they're on very, very small lots, like probably less than 5,000 square feet
Mhm.
total, right? It includes the footprint of the house and the driveway. So you've got probably less than 1,000 square feet of yard, and there's 4 or 5 large dogs back there pissing and crapping all the time. So it's
God.
created this squalid condition in what's basically sort of a semi-urban area. And it shouldn't be allowed, but so what's the proximity of your house to theirs? Like how far away is it?
Yeah, so my house is actually situated kind of like behind theirs. Um,
Okay.
and all of the houses, there's not a ton of houses like on the road I'm on like a dead end, like dirt road basically. And each house has, I would say, like between 2 and like 10 acres of land, like total that the property is on. So between their house and mine, there is a transmission line easement. I don't know what what the standard like size of those are, but I would estimate it's around from their fence that they built that they keep the dogs in to the front of my house, probably about 150 yards.
Oh, okay. Yeah. But it's open, so you can hear barking and things like that.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, you can hear the barking amazing how noise travels. It
Yeah.
is
Well,
really amazing.
particularly, we've discussed that a few times on here too. I mean, dogs are really loud, because the decibel scale is logarithmic. So, 100 decibels isn't twice as loud as 50. It's like 100 times as loud. I forget what the log function is, but people don't get to. So, and I think dogs bark at, from like 100 to 110. Yeah, that carries a long way. A long way,
Yeah, exactly.
particularly if there's nothing in between. If you don't have, like, say, a landscape feature between you and it to block the noise, it'll carry a very long way. So
Yeah. Well, this is a very heavily like wooded area too. I mean, but the transmission line easement obviously has been like clear cut completely. So that has not, but even with the trees, the noise is not really blocked that much, and they are extremely loud. I mean, none of the dogs, it's weird how it's weird how her rescue doesn't seem to have the need to rescue any dogs smaller than like a pit bull. Like they're all large dogs. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Like they're all like big dogs.
yeah. And they're probably mostly pit bulls also, because it's like we were just talking about that, Jones and I. It's like, yeah, pit bulls, America's favorite dog to get rid of.
Exactly. No, no, they're labs. They're lab mixes. No.
Yeah, they're terrier mixes. They're
Yeah.
Lab
buses,
mix. A lot of lab
That's
mixed with them.
nasty. Yeah, that's nasty. I mean, part of it too is you could claim or perhaps you could claim it's a private nuisance, or perhaps you and some of the other neighbors could claim, it's a public nuisance, which it
Right.
is, which it is. Um, but yeah, it's nasty. I don't know why they think that this is, well, they think it's acceptable. Anything the dogs or dog owners do is by definition justified somehow, right? Because they're rescue angels. They're giving all these fur babies a shot at a better life. So that justifies literally all this crap they're spewing. In fact, the crap they're spewing. Yeah, it's just nasty. It
Yeah,
is.
it's really I mean, it's really beyond being disgusting. I have like sheep and like young children and stuff. Like it is also a constant source of like stress now for me. Like
Yep.
concern when I see the dogs loose running around. I mean, like I said, they're big dogs. They seem to be I don't believe most dogs at all ever are very like well trained, or even if they are, like it's not going to stop them from like attacking or biting someone
Yep.
necessarily. But these seem to be, on that scale, like at a zero. Like they're literally kept in like a kennel all the time. Like,
Yep.
whatever she thinks she's doing to help the dogs, like they don't seem to be getting any interaction outside of like whenever someone comes to hose their shit away and like
Yeah.
feed them, So when they're out, they run amok. Like I don't know how this person even manages to get them like back in the fence. Probably like entices them with food. Like
Probably, yeah. Dinner served,
yeah,
run the
so I'm
camera.
always like peering out the window and like making sure the sheep are okay and like like don't let the kids play outside alone because I'm worried like some dog might run up. It's just we shouldn't have to be living like this. I
Yeah.
don't know what the tipping point will be, for, like, the average person to feel the same way. I also had one other, like, small experience I was gonna mention if we have time.
Oh yeah, we got time. Yeah.
So we've discussed this before, and I know I have like angrily said, like, I'm never living in the country again. Like, fuck this. I'm moving to, you know what I mean? But like, as we all know, and you have pointed out, like, this problem is everywhere. Like, bad
Yep.
situation was in like a suburban neighborhood with tiny yards, and I'm sure, like, I've never lived in a city, like, you know,
Oh,
in an apartment and stuff like that, but I'm sure the city also has
Oh yeah.
its
It's
own
a
problems.
it's
I
a
could tell you
big
about my
problem.
next door.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Jones.
I could tell you about my next door feed. There's bully breeds getting loose all the time. At least once a week, at least. So,
Yeah. So for uh it was either Thanksgiving or Christmas. The whole holiday season has kind of like merged into one day in my mind. So, but for one of these recent holidays, we went over to Mr. Sheepie's aunt's house for like dinner, and they live in like a really kind of exclusive country club, style, like gated neighborhood, like really nice houses. Like, they're all custom homes, like, just to set the stage. I mean, this is a really nice, probably like half a mil and up houses. You know what I mean? So,
Yep.
anyways, to set the stage. So we drive in, and I'm like, wow, this is like so nice. I wish I could live here. Like, I'm so sick of these fucking dogs all the time.
Yeah.
And we get there, and it's really nice. It's amazing. And they actually have like a German Shepherd, but they know like I don't like dogs, so they always put their dog away. Like, they lock it up
Okay. Well,
somewhere
that's
when I get there.
thoughtful. Yeah, that's
Yes.
thoughtful because many dog owners won't do that.
No, they
You know.
won't. But they do, which I really appreciate. But anyways, then we went out into their backyard for a while, and it's gorgeous. It's like overlooks a pond on this like golf course. And then all of a sudden, like, to my left, there's this like rah 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 rah. I was like, oh my god, what the fuck? And the neighbor has one of those fucking like doodles. Like,
Ugh.
those things are huge. They're bigger than I imagined them to be. And they're so like aggressive. This is not the first time. Every time I encounter one of these doodles, I swear they're being like just wildly aggressive. And so that thing just like totally like broke the peace. It was like barking like crazy. And then I started like kind of looking in the neighbor's yard, and it, like I said, absolutely stunning homes. They had like a pool, and then like the little patch of yard, like the yards aren't huge, but the little patch of grass that wasn't like pool, I just noticed was like 50 piles of shit. Like,
Ugh.
and I was just like, oh my god, like, you can
Yeah.
never escape this.
Yeah. Well,
Like,
you know what it is with neighborhoods like that is that, and there's a lot of communities near me in Florida that are like that. I live in a suburban neighborhood, but we don't. It's not locked up like in an HOA. But what happens is that the HOA board gets converged by nutters, right? It gets taken over by these dog cult interests. So they'll enforce because those places have a lot of rules. And it's one reason why I didn't want an HOA neighborhood because they got rules and like you can't park a trailer in your driveway. And if your grass is more than 2 inches tall, you get fined. And you can only paint your house. You can paint your house any color you want as long as it's white and so forth.
right?
So they have all these rules. But the thing is, and they'll have pet rules also, like no barking, no dogs off leash, yada yada yada, right? But they don't enforce those rules. So you've got the dog nut neighbor from hell. They won't do anything about that. But they'll fine you if your grass is a 1/4 inch too tall. I've
Right.
even known people, right? This is how bad this can get. I've known people who, live in communities like that, and they're very Tuesday. They have rules. They want you to keep your place to a certain standard. I know people, like dog-free people, who've been fined for having dog shit in their yard. even though it's not their
It's
dog.
not even their dog,
It's
yeah.
not even their dog, but they get ticketed for dog shit in their yard. They get ticketed for having patches of yellow grass because a dog, dog piss is very toxic. And plus, they like to pee in the same space. So if a dog pisses somewhere, the next dog that comes along will also want to piss there. So they get all these, yellow patches, maybe the size of a small dinner plate all over their lawn. And they'll find them for that too. Because they'll say, well, look, neighborhood dogs are pissing in my yard. They won't let you put a fence up to keep them out, right? So they get fined for that too. And they don't even have a dog, right? Because the HOA says, look, it's your lawn, you're accountable for it. But they say, okay, why don't you keep these neighborhood dogs off my lawn? They'll fine them. They won't do it, right? They refuse to, it's part of the whole dog culture paradigm. They'll enforce every rule to the letter unless there's a dog involved, and then everything goes.
Yep.
So
It's
Probably
the
their
Mutt Matrix.
dog.
sorry, what'd you
That
say?
was probably their dogs too.
Well, it may be, because that's the whole thing, is that's why they get on these boards, right? Because they say, yeah, I don't want to get cited if my dog is off leash, so I'll just get on the board and make sure that that doesn't happen. So, yep, yeah, there's a lot of corruption there. The whole Mutt Matrix is totally corrupt. But yeah, the problem is everywhere. It's
Yeah.
not. And it takes different flavors. I mean, I used to hear from a lot of people who would say they actually gave up their suburban home because of dog problems, because a lot of apartment complexes were pet free or at least dog free. But now we were talking about this before you came on, like the service dog loopholes and the ESA loopholes. Now they can bypass those rules. So the guy with he's got a service pit and an ESA pit, he moves in next door to you in the quote dog free apartment complex, right? And you're stuck with them. So as long as a dog doesn't misbehave too badly, they get to stay. I mean, they can still kick them out for behavior, but again, good
It
luck.
takes a while probably for that to even happen, though.
Oh
I mean,
yeah.
it
Oh
probably
yeah.
rises to the level of this dog has attacked multiple tenants now.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Once a
It's never
body.
just from barking or something.
Yeah.
If
But
you've
even
had to
bark.
probably
Sorry,
deal with
go
all
ahead.
kinds of harassment to even get something done about it.
Oh
Because
yeah.
remember what happened with Kidder.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And that happened. It happens in my neighborhood also. I said every year or two, a block war breaks out over dogs. Fortunately, it's like myself and I have some neighbors. We have kind of a loose network of people who will escalate. And in fact, I've related the story before. We'll go through it again. About a year ago, I didn't go to court that time, but a whole bunch of neighbors did, because there was another neighbor who had 3 pit bulls that were loose all the time. And they'd killed other pets. They'd attacked a couple on bicycles. It was like just this huge. But the thing is, this went on for months. And literally a posse of people had to go to court to get something done. And even then, they didn't do much. So the judge said, okay, they got to pay a fine. They got to fence the dogs in. They have to get an insurance policy, which are probably all things they should have done anyway. Actually, the one that sort of was a follow-up to that, the epilogue was that the dog owner didn't meet any of the stipulations. The dogs continued their reign of terror over the neighborhoods. They were animal control impounded and euthanized. That's what the judge said. If you don't get your shit together, I'm going to order your dogs killed. And they still didn't do anything. But the thing is that there's no prompt action on it. It takes really it's like a war. It's a collective effort that goes on for months or years even to get something done. And going back to what I would like to see different is I would like prompt corrective action on these things. Enough of giving these people a pass on everything, but we're kind of getting off. But yeah, like where you are really isn't that exceptional. And every neighborhood has their dog bully, and yeah,
Right. The other thing that keeps striking me about this, and I think I've mentioned it before in my situation, the house in front of me that is now occupied by these quote dog rescuing, like basically dog hoarders as far as I'm concerned, is brand new. They are the first people to live in that house. It was just built. Like as soon as it got on the market, like they bought it. And I still can't get over that. Like you would destroy a brand new home in this like country where it's so difficult for people to find like housing at times here. So
Yeah.
expensive. You know what I mean? Like it's
Yeah.
so expensive now. Like mortgage rates, like everything is like insane again, like stacked against you to like own a home. And then you have people buy how like really nice new houses, clean, like they could live in a really nice place. And it gets like in within like months or less, that house has got to be destroyed on the inside. Like the
Yep.
garage will never be the same again. Like, you know what I mean? The
Yeah,
yard,
it's gonna
I,
stink like dog probably for even if the next occupants don't have dogs, it's probably gonna stink like dogs for years.
it's gonna, I mean, because cement is, I'm not like a construction expert, but it's like porous to
Yep.
some extent,
Yeah.
right? Like
Yep.
it's going to like leach in. Probably like there's always going to be a permanent stench, some level of like, "Ugh, what is that smell in that house forever?" You know what I mean? And the yard is destroyed. I'll
Yep.
try to send pictures of that. There's a lot of trees, so it's hard to get a clear picture, but there's like a dirt track. Like if you look into their backyard now, it looks like a dirt track because the dogs just circle and circle and circle and circle, like that they've worn through like whatever grass and plants and stuff, and just made this like bare dirt like circle. And then the rest of the yard also is like disgusting. She doesn't clean the shit up out of the yard. You know what I mean? She like leaves it there to just slowly dissolve, and I don't even want to know what the inside of the house looks like because
Yeah.
I'm
And they,
pretty
well, they
sure the
don't.
dogs are in there too.
Yeah, and they don't pick up the piss either. Like I was saying, like with that, some of my acquaintances is that, they just pee on the ground and yeah, that just soaks into the dirt too and into the concrete in the garage. So yeah, that garage is probably going to smell like, dog filth for if not forever, for a very long time. That soil back there, it's kind of like Bad's neighbor. That soil is destroyed. You probably have to scrape it down to bedrock to,
Right.
bring in. I mean, too, it's like it's a toxic waste site. You got
Yeah,
to
and it was
scrape up.
new.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
gotta scrape up. They do that. I don't know, like where you folks are, but like where I'm from, like in New Jersey, there's big issue with like old you get some of these really old neighborhoods and homes have actually my first house had an underground oil tank. And those underground oil tanks become a big problem after a while because they rust through and the heating oil soaks into the ground. And you have this big cleanup effort because the state and federal EPA says if that happens, you got to take everything out, right? You got to bring in, every trace of contaminated soil has to be dug up and hauled away to a disposal facility. And it's very, very expensive. And yes, almost this situation, but that's the thing is like you have dog people doing essentially the same thing, but it's all good, right? Nobody cares except us. But no, I
Right.
mean, really, like, yeah, these environmental authorities should be cracking down on this, but they're not because it's a dog.
Yes. Yeah. It's a dog, which is furry Jesus, so it can do no wrong. Like
Yeah, right. Yeah,
the impact is definitely being like wildly, not even just underestimated. I feel it's like almost just not even estimated at all, like completely ignored. You know what
oh
I
yeah,
mean? Like
yep,
not even
yeah.
considered.
Well, that's why in a lot of the dog space, I mean, typically your two biggest complaints that get heard are dog attacks, aggravated assaults and noise polluting, because those are the most they're painfully obvious, right? It's funny, like I don't know if you've been reading like Canon's like comment sections, but he really gets trolled a lot by these dog nutters, like way worse than I do or anybody else in the space. But saying, "Oh, these are just isolated incidents," and it's like, no, it's like it is. It's painfully obvious that dangerous dogs and noisy dogs are a big problem. all you got to just walk down the street anywhere, and it becomes self-evident, right? But some of this other stuff, like that concern, like the dog fouling stuff, and that's evident also. But yeah, you've got somebody who is totally befouling their land with this. And I'm sure they'll claim property rights, but back to like, up north, like, the oil tanks, they're like, no, because when that oil tank leaks, that can get into the groundwater, right? So it doesn't just affect you, it can leach off property. It impacts other people. You're poisoning the state, soil, air, and water, right? Because it befouls the air also. We used to joke, the bad situation, I call it the cloud of death, because the dog nut neighbor, they'll actually mow that backyard,
Oh
and
my
he's
God.
shown it in video. There's nothing back there. It's just a piss and shit soaked mud puddle. But
Oh,
they're back there mowing this thing, and the lawnmower is blowing all this effluent into the air. Right now, it's not going to. It doesn't go into outer space. What happens? Well, it settles. It precipitates out onto other people's properties. Right. So now you've got dog shit dust all over everything. It's nasty.
oh,
Yeah, and it's an element of this that, well, really no element of this gets enough airtime, but that one, you're right, definitely doesn't get enough airtime. It's
well, we're just in a climate of um increased concern for the environment, supposedly, or like, the climate and all that, like, and yet, yeah, stuff like this goes completely, like, I don't know. To me, it's like I'm constantly seeing discussions and articles and stuff about how, like, livestock impacts the climate, and we need to do something about, I'm not taking a side one way or the other here. I'm just saying I see this
right.
discussion.
Oh, yeah, everybody does. Yeah, it's a very
Yeah,
common
but yet, like,
argument.
dogs are consuming how much resources and producing, like, how much shit, and, like, you know what I mean? I see constantly people are, like, feeding their stupid mutt, like, raw meat diets, and, like, feeding them better, like, higher quality food than, like, a lot of children get to eat. You know what I
Yep.
mean? And it's like, this has got to be contributing, well, to anyone who's concerned about the contributions of, like, livestock on the climate, like, they need to take a microscope to dog ownership, like,
Yeah,
you
particularly
know?
because you think about, because we've discussed, like, dogs attacking livestock and the like, and a lot of times, like, yeah, the livestock isn't even raised, doesn't even wind up on somebody's plate because some mutt killed it. So you have this
God, yeah.
livestock animal that's consuming resources and farting methane or whatever the perceived downside is, but it doesn't even wind up hamburger, right? It gets killed by an at-large dog and gets buried. It's like it's such a, but so you have all that extra waste also. Yeah, the
God,
whole
yeah.
thing is incredibly wasteful. Thing too is the problem with that is, and you get into things like climate change, politics, and how people spend their money or live their life or whatever. But these things, they do seriously impact others, particularly this dog. Like I said, with the dog waste issue, like it's not so much your neighbor's yard is full of dog crap, yours is too. Right. And if you
Right,
complain about it, you're the spawn of Satan. You
right.
know?
I
They
am
just,
already, like, imagining the level of flies that I'm gonna be dealing with, because they don't stay in the piles of shit in my neighbor's yard. They fly over to my house too. You know what I mean?
yep,
Like,
yep.
I swear I had more flies after these people, like, started moving in and bringing all these dogs in. I swear, and I don't think it was just my imagination. Like, the level of the amount of fly traps I bought during the summer. You know what I mean? It just was, like, abnormally high. Even, I
Yep.
swear, my sheep aren't, like, that disgusting. Like, I know there's flies around livestock or whatever. I've dealt with that. Like, but I swear, like, the numbers, like, dramatically increased when the dogs, like, moved in.
Yep. Yeah, dog crap is really nasty. Um, I remember also when I lived up north, if we had a snowstorm, we get a foot of snow, and New Jersey really isn't that cold. So it might stick around for a week or two, and then, it'd warm up and it would melt, right? And I always remembered after the thaw, there were just dog turds everywhere. I mean, literally just everywhere, because it's these doggos, they would walk their dogs or just let their dogs run the neighborhood. But the crap didn't get, because the crap would be buried in the snow essentially, right? And so, but then when the snow melted, it just revealed all this stuff. It's like, oh, it's so nasty. And this was 20 years ago. Imagine it's probably worse now. It's awful, they had the scooper law, but maybe they scoop the poop, but they don't pick up the piss. So in a lot of these city areas, and I even remember, again, 20, 25 years ago, I worked in New York City on and off, but back then, New York, Manhattan Island was just a giant dog urinal.
Ugh.
And it would flush, and they had water quality issues in the East River and Hudson River from this. But again, nobody ever really identified the problem. They'd say, well, it's due to untreated waste, they would say, right?
Yeah, what waste is being untreated?
What
everywhere.
waste is being, because the thing is, New York City actually they have a state-of-the-art, very effective sewage treatment system. But that only, that's what the toilets flush into, right? The sidewalk, the runoff from the streets and the sidewalks just, drains right into the river, right? And people are going to say, they're going to say, well, homeless people and all that, like peeing on the sidewalk or whatever. But yeah, it's mostly dog piss.
Right. There's 1,000 times more dogs than
right, because you got way more. And the thing is, it seems like dogs really, their bodies produce a lot of waste. I can even remember from having dogs, I'd walk the dog, and it would, in a 20-minute walk, it would crap like 3 times. But or it'd pee twice. Like, what's up with that? It just seemed like there's so much material flowing through these things. It's
I mean, it's like that's kind of like, I think it's you said something once that was really funny, but it's almost like they're just piss and shit generators. Like you input like food and water and just output like tons of shit and like piss. Like that's all what else do they do? Like,
they're
crap
hounds.
Yeah.
Noise too.
Yeah.
Oh yes, noise. How could I forget?
Yeah, they're turd factories.
They're loud, noisy turd generators.
They're loud, noisy turd factories.
You imagine living with them though, like, because this is like our perspective, and we don't even live in the same house.
Right.
God. Well, almost everyone I talk to, that's another thing I was gonna mention. So, other relatives, basically everyone except, I think, us at this point, me and Mr. Sheepie. I think almost everyone else has dogs, at least one. But one couple in particular that I'm thinking of own several, and they literally just at this point like nonchalantly mention like things about like, oh yeah, little whatever pupper, just like peed all over our pillows, haha, like I'm glad I got new pillowcases recently because the dog just got up on the bed and like peed all over them, and I'm just like, what the fuck? Like,
well, the thing is, I'm sure the piss like just soaked right through the pillowcase. I mean,
like, yeah, you need the whole new pillow, like you need a whole new bed, like get rid of the dog. Like, come on.
like
you need a whole new lifestyle. Like, this is
maybe these dog homes get, going back, you were talking about how they'll just like ruin a house. I related this story before. It's a good story. So the first time, this is pros when I was pretty young and I was looking at homes for the first time. And I remember going to this house and, suburban neighborhood. The homes were like old, like 1920s colonials, like small colonials. I remember walking in and I got about 5 feet over the threshold. It hit me like a sledgehammer, the stench. And it was all like, well, I think there was some cat odors also, but it just reeked of dog shit and dog piss. But everything had been cleaned out. Right, it had been clean, but the stench had just like permeated everything. I had to stop and I said to the realtor, Next.
Yeah, I mean, God, ugh.
Not gonna get your money's worth.
Well, I think, maybe the thing to do is just like, maybe just a tear down at that point. Just,
Honestly.
just burn it down and start over. Yes, the thing is you cleanse it with fire. He needs a flamethrower.
I couldn't stop thinking about that with the house the house next door to the house we visited in the like golf course area. Like they came out because they heard the dog like going insane. Like we were just standing in the backyard and that dog was like going fucking insane. Like so the owners eventually came out and were like trying to get the dog to come in. And of course it doesn't listen. Like it just
Right.
stayed there barking for a while until like we went back inside. But like it was standing in amidst those, like, piles of shit I was telling you about. Like, it was, like, running around and barking and, like, among these, like, 50 piles of, like, dog crap, and it was kind of wet out. It, like, was not, like, super raining, but kinda misty and just, like, moist. So the it was disgusting, but I can't get over the thought of, like, they let that dog in their house. Like, it was walking around in these piles of shit and like it's gonna run back with its paws like into their home, like this beautiful, nice, gorgeous house. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
how? Like I don't know, dude. Maybe it's like I don't think I used to think it was because I was just raised a certain way. Like I told you my dad's like Middle Eastern and we just don't view dogs that way and we never had a dog in the house. Like we never had any animals inside our house. And none of my like Lebanese family just ever viewed dogs like that. Like they just don't have the same outlook. I used to think that was what was going on, but I don't know. I don't think that's all. Like I think it's just gotten way worse too.
Oh
You know
yeah.
what I
Oh yeah.
mean?
Oh yeah. I mean, it's yeah, dog culture has just gone completely out of control. I keep meaning to do, and it might actually be better as a group effort, but I've been wanting to do, even back last decade when I was blogging, to do a segment on the evolution of, I'll call it like modern dog culture, like post World War II, right? How it sort of evolved from then to today. Because, even in the US, I mean, pre World War II, or particularly pre 1900, I don't think pet dogs really weren't all that common. Mainly because people probably couldn't afford it, because you go back far enough. I mean, people take prosperity for granted. I mean, 100 back, say, Civil War era, if you had food on the table at the end of the day, you were lucky, at least for the 99%. They didn't have the resources to spare. They didn't have the medical resources either. Because you think something like 1,000 dog attacks a year require antibiotics. But we didn't have antibiotics until World War II, right? So even a bite from a small dog could be potentially fatal in that case. I wanted to do that, but yeah, it really didn't get crazy until maybe 15 or 20 years ago. And I think that really coincides with widespread use of social media like
Yeah,
Facebook,
that's a really
Twitter.
good point.
Yeah, because you can see that. And I think, your neighbors are doing it also, because really it's a religion. These people well, maybe they might not idolize dogs, but they constantly want to project that they're, pious, right? See how good I am for rescuing all these puppers or treating my dogs better than kids, right? That's all that it is. They're all trying to sort of outflank each other on who can, worship the furry Jesus the most. And they do that on social media. So it kind of feeds itself. And that's how it keeps becoming more and more extreme. We're talking about feeding dogs versus feeding kids. I mean, you see cases where, I mean, it's not just somebody this person with a dog will feed the dog better than that person with a kid. Somebody with dogs and kids will feed the dogs better than their kids,
Right.
right? They'll feed the dog, they'll give it like, filet mignon, and the kids get like store brand mac and cheese. And not only
Right.
that, but they're proud of it. They're saying, look how good I am. Look at what a great person I am. even though the dog doesn't care, but that's the other thing too, is you're considered, now it's bad to like feed your dog food.
Yeah, like you're a bad person for giving them kibble or whatever.
Right, exactly. It's like, well, you're a bad person for treating, the dog like a dog. Or expecting the dog to behave. That's the other thing that's changed. Because I've related to some of my experiences growing up, like my stepdad with his dogs. And I was mentioning that before you came on. But like, he was an old school dog person, right? He is somebody who, and he and I have had our problems, but at least in this space, he's somebody we would consider to be a good dog owner. Like if he were to move next door to you with his dogs, I would say, you know what, don't worry about it. Because his mentality was, the dogs are going to be in the home, live in human communities. They need to behave, right? They need to be held to some standards, which takes a lot of work. It's a big responsibility for the dog owner. But that's why his dogs we didn't have a tail. I mean, they got out of hand. They caused problems sometimes, but he was constantly correcting them. But that's gone out of fashion. Like today's dog cultists would consider him to be a Nazi. Like, how dare you restrict Fido and Rover from doing whatever they want? Right? That's mean. That's evil. Like, dogs have a right to do whatever they want with no restraint. It was interesting, one of the new content providers, Dog Culture Review, and I'd really love to get him on one of these calls. Like, his narrative is very, very similar to mine, but actually he found it was another kind of like fake social justice narrative where somebody was claiming that expecting a dog to behave, like say, like preventing it from barking or eating the toddler, is actually it's an expression of what did they call toxic masculinity, like it's patriarchal. So even if you're a feminist woman who thinks that, yeah, maybe Rover shouldn't eat the kids, well, that's just an expression of your toxic masculinity. And actually, that was a new one. Usually you hear they get into race and class narratives a lot. Now they take those things seriously. Like they don't care. They don't care about those people, but they use it to defend dogs in society, particularly dangerous dogs. That was a new one. I left a comment. I was like, yeah, that's a new one. It's like the
great
frontier. It's like, yeah, so expecting a dog to behave is just, an expression of your toxic masculinity. Even if you're a feminist woman, right?
Right. I guess as I don't know, I may be a feminist. I care about women.
Well,
but I guess I need to reevaluate. No, I mean, I'm not offended or whatever. I'm probably a feminist, or you could probably define me that way. But I guess I need to work on that because obviously I have unresolved toxic masculinity
issues. Yeah, you need to.
That is a new one. Wow, that's a whole.
Yeah, that's a whole. But that was a thrust of the article. Was it's like it's patriarchal to expect a dog to behave.
That's interesting because women tend to be the victims more often of dog aggression.
Well, exactly, and that's a problem with that. Is it doesn't. It's certain. Well, thing is, they don't care about people. Like, she's using intersectional narratives, which supposedly are used to protect people. They don't care about that. Like when they say wanting restrictions on pit bulls is racist, they don't care. Probably most of them would own slaves given the opportunity.
Right.
They don't care, right? They don't care. What they're doing is it's just a way to BTFO people. Right. So if you're sick of your next door neighbor's dog barking all the time, they'll just tell you that, check your privilege, what's
crazy is so ethnocentrism is the word that would most closely apply, because it's where you think, your own culture's, superior to the other one. It's like a human culture versus dog culture. And I mean, no one picked on that one. They picked all these other ones.
Species-centric. You're being very species-centric right now.
Yeah. Or even the one where they say like dog is God spelled backwards, but it turns out that only works in English. So I say, stop being so Anglo-centric. Like, yeah, try it. And so, like, if you reverse the spelling in Spanish, the Spanish for dog is perro, I think, Perro. But if you flip that, so like perro is orep spelled backwards, like orep doesn't mean anything, right?
Right.
But that's the thing. It's interesting is that, yeah, well, the thing is, all they care about are promoting the interests, basically their own dog cult interests. So they hijack not actually narratives from both sides. Like they hijack a lot of, left-leaning sort of intersectional narratives like race, class, and now gender, right? And they hijack right-leaning narratives also, like say self-defense and property rights. So like, yeah, if you accidentally stumble onto a dog person's property, it's like, oh yeah, if they can rip you to pieces. They couldn't shoot you or express that any other way, but that's why they have the right to say delete the UPS delivery driver. But they don't really care because they don't respect anyone else's property rights or even self-defense rights. So it's the same kind of thing. They don't really care about these intersectional narratives. They just use it to, promote their own, inequity essentially.
Right. Another thing that kind of I think corresponds with, so you were talking about how like training the dog is bad now. Another thing I think that happened like kind of simultaneously was like I see this all the time now, like you're not even allowed to keep your dog outside. Like they're constantly like, it's hot out, bring the dog in. It's cold
Yeah.
out, bring the dog in. Like,
Yeah.
I don't see dog houses that often anymore. I think you've mentioned that too. Like, where are the dog houses? Like, people aren't keeping the dogs, like, even because when I was growing up, like, the more traditional dog owners, like your stepdad, who kind of somewhat kept trained their dog, also, mostly the dog lived outside, like, all the time. And that seems to have changed. Like, it seems like now dogs are supposed to live in the house more.
Yep. Well, I think our dogs, like his dogs, it was interesting. They were, lived indoors primarily, but they're only allowed in certain parts of the house. Like they were banished from the upper floors where the bedrooms were. They could not go up there. I mean, I don't know if he kicked them down the stairs, but it's the same thing. It's like if they even set like one paw on that stairs, he was BTFOing them. The thing with it, keeping dogs outside is that I have mixed feelings about that because like most dog noise pollution comes from outdoor dogs, right?
Right.
So they tie, and I've shown the current dog owner is no longer a dog owner. They got rid of them, thankfully. Although now I'm on edge because they're probably going to get another dog at some point, but
They always do.
they always do. But like the last dog they had, or the prior occupant with their dogs, it was like, yeah, they're just tied up outside all the time. And they just bark all the time, probably just out of boredom or frustration or whatever. So I would have been like, yeah, put the dogs inside, or at least if they're barking when they're indoors, the house helps contain the noise. Right. So, but usually though, yeah, if the outdoor dog is trained not to bark unless something exceptional happens, then I guess that's cool. But
Yeah, I
really,
guess, well, from my perspective, I forget, so I've spent almost my entire life like in more of like a rural or country setting. So to me, like, I don't know, most of the people who had dogs when I was growing up, they were more like farm dogs, so they were just
yep,
outside all the time, which to me, in an ideal world, if there were any dogs at all, they would be, like you said, zoned to like only agricultural
yep,
like areas. Like I can see why a farmer might want like a cattle dog, or like a shepherd might want like a herding dog, but it would be like on hundreds of acres, and like, you know what I mean? It would not
yep,
be like every house in your suburban neighborhood has like 5 dogs.
yep. Yeah. Well, that's the thing is, yeah, they don't. The dogs of most breeds really are maladapted to crowded communities. I mean, you see these people, they have a husky, which is a dog bred to basically pull like sleds in snow all day, right? Like it's a day, cold weather, lots of exercise. They cram it into a small apartment in
Yeah,
Tampa,
living on the
Florida.
5th floor in like Houston or something.
Yeah, exactly. It's like what's up with that,
Where are the
yeah,
arguments that is dog? Where are the dog nutters who are concerned with huskies living in Florida?
yeah.
Like it's weird how they don't seem to care suddenly about like
Well,
that
I
type of
think
thing.
because, I did a monologue on this, and I don't completely have my head around it, but my thesis is that, being a dog lover is really not about a love of animals, right? Like cat lovers love cats, horse lovers love horses, and so forth. Dog lovers really love themselves, right? The dog
Yes.
is just an extension of their narcissism. It's a way to sort of extend their antisocial tendencies without getting into trouble. And it's also about, virtue signaling and all kinds of self-righteous posturing. It's a religion, and the dog is the idol of worship, but yeah, they don't really care about the well-being of the animal that much, right? And I see that all the time, even with my nutter neighbors, or even like I said, that crazy person with the 3 pit bulls that was loose all the time. Don't you worry the dog might get hit by a car or shot or get mixed up with another animal. It's like, don't you care? Right? I mean, what they're doing. I mean, it's harmful to other people, but they don't even care. You think even if all they cared about was the well-being of the dog, they would take steps to contain this behavior, but they don't.
No,
Which
yeah, you're
means
right.
that they really don't, the dog cult is not, that's why, people bring up other animals. This has nothing to do with like I said, the whole mutt matrix is totally corrupt. The whole thing is in bad faith, and these people do nothing but lie. What it's about is, yeah, it's a narcissistic, antisocial cultural movement. That's what it's about. And so, yeah, it's why they don't care. It's like, yeah, you shouldn't cram a husky into a small apartment in Houston. It's stupid. I mean, even just for an animal welfare perspective, but they don't care about the animal welfare.
Right.
So, if you get into say like horses, and other chats we've talked about, again, zoning out farm animals like horses. And the thing is like, and I know this, I come from a family of horse people. I know some horse people really love their horses, but they're not going to say, oh, yeah, keep a horse in your suburban backyard. And not just because it's the zoning rules, but it's bad for the horse. They're going to say, look, if you
Right.
want a backyard board, move to, buy a farm and keep them there, right?
Right. I would think a horse would require, like, for its own well-being, a minimum of like an acre.
Oh yeah,
You
well, I
know what
think
I
the
mean?
zoning rules. I think the zoning rules here. I think it was here in New Jersey also was 2 acres.
Yeah, that makes
Yep.
sense.
Yeah, because it needs some room to run. And it's also they do it for, like we were talking about, animal waste reasons. Because if you cram a horse into a small space, it's going to really foul that up. And horses noise pollute also. So that's an issue. Um, Of course, not like nothing noise pollutes like dogs do. But
No, for
we
sure.
set these restrictions for all kinds of very common sense reasons, and they apply to basically everything except dogs. Dogs are always the exception, and that needs to
Yeah.
change. But going back to I want to talk about the political narratives again. Is that a lot of times we were talking about is they dog cultists invoke these social justice type narratives really to promote their interests. And my point is, actually there is a social justice issue here. I point out because I really come at this more sort of like someone with an interest in civil rights and equal protection and things like that. There is a social justice issue here because dog owners and dogs themselves have been granted a ridiculous amount of power right? They have protections that nothing else does. We're talking about, if a dog mauls somebody, well, it just goes back to the owner. If any other animal mauls somebody, all hell breaks loose, for example. And that applies all these other things, all these zoning rules, noise abatement rules, everything. The dogs and dog people always get a pass. And it is, it's oppressive. It's a big power differential that needs to be, we need to sort of level that playing field, right? We need to kind of, the dog people need to check their privilege or have it checked for them. So like I said, that's something for people to think about. There's a social justice issue here, but it's not the one that they say it is. Like, objecting to pit bulls in the community is not racist, right? That's not the problem. Right? The problem is the dog people have more power than the rest of us. That's the problem. That's what needs to be fixed. So that's what needs to change.
Yes, exactly. And the power they have is so, it's like hard to describe, because there is no, like, their power lies in just like making everyone else lives worse and miserable.
Yep.
For no apparent benefit. Like, it's not like the benefit is only for their own narcissism. It's just very bizarre. I feel like there's no like parallels or no other things in our society that you can point to that are similar. It's like dog ownership is its own just bizarre, like, power.
It's its own power paradigm. Sometimes you think too, is the only thing I could compare it to, and it's probably a false equivalence, but the only thing because really you're right, it's its own thing. But probably the closest thing to it would be probably a really old school aristocracy, right? Like medieval Europe, or perhaps Egypt under the pharaohs, where they can just do whatever they want with no consequences, right? Pre-Magna Carta stuff. And I guess I've said too, is that these, really what they're doing is, it's uncivilized, it's antisocial, it's undemocratic, right? Like it pretty much, that's what I say, it's a political issue, but it doesn't really fit on the modern political spectrum because it's a power structure that's really old. Like, it's not the kind of thing, like, if anybody else were granted this power, everybody would just flip the fuck out. But you're right. It's like nobody else has the privileges and protections that these people have. It's ridiculous. But that's kind of what it's like if you have, but like sort of almost pre-medieval, type arrangement. I know one of my peer bloggers used to call it dog governance. Because they move into a location, you get the neighborhood dog bully that at least thinks they can just control everything, so it's ridiculous.
It hijacks so many narratives.
But it's weird because I feel like it's unique.
Oh, sorry, go ahead, Jones. You're saying something?
Oh yeah, it just seems like the reason they can get away with this is they've hijacked everyone else's narrative.
Yep.
Like I was saying earlier, you're a racist now if you think pit bulls ought to be banned, and just every stretch of human rights that we have has to apply to dogs. Yep,
or more. Because that's the thing, is it's not just they try to they attribute not just personage to dogs but divinity. They're like these pure and perfect fur angels sent from heaven. So, and that's why you can't, restrict them in any way, even on your own private space. Like if you tell a relative not to bring Rover over for Thanksgiving dinner, they, throw a fit and hate you forever, because, you've outed yourself as the Antichrist at that point.
Yeah, exactly. You
know?
are a heretic.
Yeah,
You
and
are
that's
living heretical.
yeah, that's interesting too. Is like one another group I like to beat up on. The adept types. It was interesting. Chef, shout out to her. I want to get her on one of these calls fairly soon too. She put up a video as a shout out to all the content creators like myself and I Hate Dogs and some of the other folks. And somebody asked her in the comments section, why not pit bull victim awareness? And she said, I thought her, response, she was very fair. She said, yeah, I mean, it's an interesting channel with some good content, but the problem is it really it caters to dog interests, which is sort of counterintuitive, but 75% of the people on there are dog cultists, right? And they're only opposed to pit bulls because pit bulls attack other dogs, right, with a disproportionate frequency, right? But those same people, they don't disagree with any of these narratives. Like, for example, well, I guess you weren't on Sheep because Jones and I were looking at this case where some fake service dog shit all over the inside of an airplane and it had to make an emergency landing.
Can you
But
imagine?
they would defend that. They would say, oh, that service dogs are essential. Like you're ableist. What's wrong with you? I'm like that's their other thing. You're ableist. But that's the other point I make too, is like service dogs have nothing to do with helping disabled people. They don't, right? What all it's about, it's just promoting. All they want is they want a loophole that enables them to take their dog everywhere. That's
Yes,
what it's about.
1000%.
Yep.
1000%.
And
I've seen the
even
most ridiculous service dog stories, like that lady who was like, I have to have my dog with me so I don't stand in the middle of the road. It's like, you have more problems than a service dog.
yeah.
Theories they come up with.
Well, there was a blind guy in Australia that got, as a lot of people, even many folks in our space say, well, guide dogs for the blind are legit. And I'm like, not so fast there, cowboy, because I've witnessed guide dog fails. I vlogged about that. And there was a case in Australia where a guide dog walked a man right into traffic. Bam.
I'm sorry. I
Delete.
shouldn't laugh, but
Well,
it's so ridiculous.
Well, it is. And it just shows that like these things they're certainly not a reliable way to mitigate these problems.
No, I
Well,
have never in my life seen. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I mean, I've seen people, who are, clearly visually impaired, and most of the time they've got a long stick. They might have something soft at the tip of it, and they're just feeling around. And if they want to cross the street, the crosswalk will announce which street they're crossing into. So
Yep.
they don't seem to need guide dogs for getting around over here.
Yeah. Well, and the thing is, half the time the dog doesn't really guide them properly anyway, because navigating a human city requires human judgment, and dogs don't have that. I mean, I've only seen, I think, twice in my life, I've seen a blind person with a guide dog. The first time, and I've related this story, but it's always good. The guide dog walked a blind man right into a scaffold. Didn't injure him, but it was, again, it was almost, I'd say it was almost, it's not comically bad. It was a super cringe. I was like, oh, God. And the
Yeah.
second time it was pretty, well, maybe it was a year and a half ago. I was walking behind a couple going into Costco, and they had a dog with them. So on my left, there was a man, woman in the middle, dog, right? And the man and woman had the dog. They were like, their elbows were locked. So her left arm was like locked into his right arm at the elbow. And you could tell she had I guess she had dark glasses on. She appeared to be visually impaired, right? And they didn't stop her because nobody's going to tell a blind person with a guide dog to GTFO, even if they really don't need the dog. But I'm thinking, okay, she's got, I don't know who the man was. He was sighted. I don't know if it was her husband or boyfriend or whatever. I don't know, assumption to make there. But she had a person with her to help her, right? What if she needs a dog for? So,
Right.
you know, and it's like, again, you know, Costco is a, you know, it's a establishment that sells food. You know, there should be no animals there unless they're shrink wrapped in the meat case, perhaps.
I see dogs almost every time I go to Costco now, and I wouldn't put it, call me cynical, I wouldn't put it past a dog nutter to put on like dark tinted glasses and pretend to be black. Where I wouldn't, it wouldn't surprise me anymore.
Yeah, it wouldn't either. You know, that was a point I make. I mean, the thing is, you realize at least most of these people are faking a disability to get special treatment. I actually put that, maybe it was one of Kanon's comment sections, I forget. And of course, no, it was on Reddit. And some nutter said, "Oh, you think that all blind people fake being blind?" Talk about a straw man fallacy. I never said that any blind person faked being blind. What I'm saying is, yeah, dog nut might fake being blind to get the dog in, you know, maybe. I wouldn't put it past any of them, you know. Like I was saying before, null hypothesis. Until there's a proofing system for these things, I'm just going to assume they're all fake.
Well, you're not allowed to really ask them. You know what I mean? Like,
Well,
that's
yeah, I mean, well, you can ask them, but they don't have to show any proof.
right.
Right.
Yeah.
So they can, but as they ask the two questions, like somebody shows up with a dog, you can say, is this a service dog required because of a disability? Yes or no. And what task or service has the dog been trained to perform? So they answer the first question, they say yes. And the second question is, yeah, they lick their ass when I have a seizure, right? Right. So that's the because there's no standards for this, but I don't have to prove anything. There's no permit.
It
There's no
seems that,
permitting requirement.
yeah, people just get a dog and then say, I'm training this to be my service dog. Like,
Yep.
that's the standard. I, in my life, have never one time seen I've never seen a seeing eye dog in real life, ever. I'm not saying they don't exist or it's, not a thing. I'm just saying it's so rare. But the number of dogs I see that are fake service dogs is like constant every time
Oh
I
yeah.
leave the
And
house.
you can tell people are going to say, well, how do you know? But I think the
Because
thing is,
come on.
well, legit service dog should be focused entirely on the handler. Right. You can tell that, you know, the dog is pulling on the leash, it's sniffing around, it's focused on whatever, you know, and something else. So that's the tell that it's not legit because it should not be doing that because
It's barking at the
it's
entrance to the store.
barking,
Like,
yeah,
come
it's
on.
barking at random people. And it should be focused on the handler. Like again, if it's a diabetic alert dog, which is a scam, but supposedly it should be focused on the handler so it can, you know, notify when, you know, an insulinic crisis is like onset, right? Because if it's, you know, focused on somebody else, like if it's licking its lips and staring at that toddler over there, its attention is not where it should be, right? So yeah, you could tell it's a fake, and that's even provided these are legit tasks to begin with, which I think many
Basically,
of them are.
if it acts like a dog.
Yeah.
Well, here's another way I know, and I can tell, because Reddit started suggesting the service dog subreddit to me. Like, it just started recommending posts from there. So out of curiosity, I started looking through some of them for a while. And almost every post is about the dog having behavioral issues in the store. It's not about people and their disabilities and how the dog's helping the particular disability. It's about people getting unruly dogs, slapping a fake vest they bought from Amazon on the dog and taking it to stores, and then they're like, "How do you keep your dog from shitting all over the aisles? Every time I take my service dog out, he's pooping in the in the
Oh
store. Like, what do
God.
you guys do?" And it's
Yeah.
the
How do
whole
you
thing is
manage
about
that?
misbehaved service dogs, quote
Yeah.
service dogs. That's how I know.
Oh
I
yeah.
see
Yeah.
them.
Yep. Yeah, we see because you see them, they're fairly often, you know, and you know, these aren't isolated incidents. You know, again, it's kind of like with the dog barking or dangerous dogs. You see it all the time or hear it. You know, I mean, it's self-evident. It's a big problem. So, Interesting stuff. So we're coming up on 2 hours, folks. I'm about at my limit. I think, speaking of Costco, I think I want to head over there because it stopped raining, and hopefully I'll have a much free Costco experience.
I'll pray to dog that you that you do.
Pray to dog. Dog, help me. Oh, dog bless
Godspeed.
you guys. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, dog works in mysterious ways. It's like, why does the service dog crap in the aisle? It's like, well, dog works in mysterious ways. Anyway, also, yeah, thanks guys for joining. There's always interesting stories. Yeah, and Jones, best of luck with the boy. I don't know what to, I don't know what to say, but I definitely, your concern is definitely legit. I would feel the same way. I think anybody would. So
yeah, definitely, 100%.
yeah. Hopefully it'll resolve. And maybe if you want to communicate something, you can say, look, if something happens, you folks are going to be held accountable. As often, there is account. I mean, of course, it's after the fact. But that, sometimes, confrontation with painful consequences is often enough to get these people to change their behavior. Right, like trying to reasoning with them, or trying to appeal to, trying to make some common sense appeal doesn't work. But if say, hey, look, you know what? If your dog injures my kid, I'm going to cut off your head and use it for a soccer ball. Okay, and they're like, maybe that's a situation to avoid. I'm not saying you should do that. I'm snarking, but I don't know. It's probably maybe something to ponder. So.
Yeah, when logic and reason fail with these types of people, yeah, you might have to. Maybe they only understand consequences. I don't know.
That's it. That's all they do understand. Because the reason they have this problem, talk about dog privilege, is that one of their privileges is they never get held accountable.
Yeah, 1000%. There are no
consequences. That's at least a privilege they hold, and they shouldn't have it. It's totally, like I said, it's totally uncivilized and antisocial. I mean, look, if you're gonna live in a society and have the freedom to do anything, you're at least passively agreeing to be held accountable, right? Like, you're gonna drive a car. You need to stay in your lane, literally, obey traffic signals, don't drive drunk, et cetera, because if you don't, there's going to be problems. And if you cause enough problems, you lose your driving privilege, right? Or even go to prison. But it seems like, the dog owner privilege puts them outside of that. They're like, they can just do whatever they want with no consequences.
Didn't need a license to do it either.
Yeah, they don't.
Yeah, exactly.
They don't. Well, even like with the service dog stuff, I mean, it'd be one thing to say you need a license just to have a pet dog, but they don't even need you need a license to, look at all the rules they're bypassing. They're bypassing local health codes, state health codes, federal health codes, right? The association rights of the proprietor and the other customers, right? And they get to do all that with no oversight. It's ridiculous. It's absurd,
Yeah, there has to be a tipping point. I don't know when.
There is. You know what's happening? Here's my white pill, because I've been in and out of the space for a while. And the difference that I'm seeing is more people are speaking out. Right. I mean, because you could say the problem's getting worse, but I think we're actually past peak dog culture. And people are saying, oh, but you still have Florida finally vacated the Miami pit bull ban, and there's other changes going on. But the thing is that all that stuff is downstream of culture. So the changes in the legal and the public policy space are really more reflective of the culture, maybe 5-10 years
of the past. Yeah, exactly.
So that's, it's what they call, it's what an economist calls like a trailing indicator, right? So it's a trailing indicator. So what we see now in the public policy space is really reflective of what was true in the culture, but the culture really has shifted, I think, because more people are speaking out. You're actually able to communicate, because 10 years ago, you couldn't say anything. Even remotely, even something as innocuous as, well, maybe owning a dog isn't for everybody. You got branded, you're an evil hater, you're the spawn of Hitler and Satan, and just banned everywhere. But now you can say that, right? It's like, maybe it's not a popular opinion, but it's at least, it's like, the whole Overton window concept. It's like now that window is shifted in our direction. So some of these is like, yeah, like you're seeing now, people are calling for criminalization of dog attacks. Like I've been calling for a dozen years. And most people say, well, that's not good enough. We need to ban all these murder mutts. And I don't disagree, but criminalization of dog, it's part of the progress, right?
Yeah.
Because 10 years ago was like, it was unthinkable that you would throw somebody in jail for what the dog did, even if there was intent involved, right? Even if it was, I mean, some of these killings last decades, these weren't manslaughters, these were straight up murders, and people got away with them. Now it's starting to shift, right? Now you're starting to see, okay, people are starting, it's just starting, some of these district attorneys and county sheriffs are like, you know what? We need to go after these people. No more getting off the hook all the time. And that's very encouraging also. And more people are saying that. It's like, you know what? Your dog is just an extension of you. Anything your dog does is equivalent to what you do.
Yeah, I think you're right, 100%. Like the culture has to come first. So
Yep.
hopefully in 5 to 10 years we will start seeing like legislation that reflects this culture, and it will just
Yep.
continue to grow from there.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yep. Anyway, I'm going to wrap it up, folks. So thanks both of you for joining. This is Animal Uncontrol. And as always, people first. Later, folks.
Bye.
Thanks for having us.
Yep.